Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to the Accursed. Spiders creep people out, don't they? It's that old fear of putting your bare foot into a slipper and finding something wriggling among your toes. It's that worry about reaching over to a glass of water in the middle of the night, bringing it to your lips to take a sip, and finding something brushing against you. Just there. It's that fear that if you sleep with your mouth open, something will crawl along or drop down from the ceiling, climb inside, lay its eggs, fill your throat with a thick coating of web. No? Well, maybe that was going a little too far at the end there, so let's backpedal. Personally, I have no fear of spiders. They do wonderful work, spinning their webs, catching flies, even wasps sometimes, and no one likes wasps. They keep our homes free from such pests. One could argue spiders are just as much a pest as the others, but not me, no. I think they perform a necessary service. What they need is PR. The 8 hands aren't really helping with that side of things. It's not to say that the 8 hands are all beyond charisma, and they certainly have persuasive abilities, though they lean more toward fear than charm. There's just something about the family that makes me itch. The way they pair their activities with their tendency toward darkness, for example. The way they weave their webs to such a fine degree that you don't even realise you're caught in one until it's time to leave and you realise you can't move and there's something dropping lower and lower from the ceiling, closer and closer to your head, and it's hungry, it's ravenous. Beautiful creatures. Beautiful. Sublime, even. How something so small, so easily defended against, in principle, can terrify so many. The 8 hands don't start as spiders, though. Just like all other primal, they start off human. They aren't born from a spider's hatchlings. They are human, and once they enter the wrong web, or maybe one of their ancestors did, the curse follows. One night, you're sitting with your friends, playing video games, and then all of a sudden, you feel that itch under your skin, and that skin starts to split, and hundreds of tiny spiders pour out. And you should be in excruciating pain right now. That's what all the primals say. That first shift is a pain like no other. You should be in pain and you should be afraid, but far from it. For the 8 hands, this is a euphoric feeling. This is a necessary feeling. This is like a pent-up desire that you have had to keep inside because of societal constraints, because you just weren't sure of yourself until now. Yes, there will be the unfortunate predicament of having to ensnare your friends in your fresh webs and make sure that they know what they should say, what they shouldn't say, what they should be afraid of, and so on. Maybe they just smoked something a little bad tonight and they're hallucinating, that kind of thing. But, all told, for the 8 hands, that first shift, becoming a primal, that is a positive outcome. Not all 8 hands are swarms in human form, however. Some are what you'd expect. Colossal, hairy, mutant spiders wedged very, very tightly into thin human skin. Sometimes they're not even arachnid at all. I've encountered 8 hands that more resemble cockroaches, millipedes, beetles, anything that might be considered to have an exoskeleton, armor plating, bristles, it seems, can constitute one of the 8 hands. So why the name? Why 8 hands? Is it simply because the spider form is the most common among all of them? It's not simply that, though it is certainly a part. That's how they're perceived anyway. Most commonly, they're referred to as ochos. It's difficult to say something that you are one of the 8 hands because they'll say, no, there are 8 of them. I am an ocho. But let's get to it, shall we? it isn't just the spider connection. Somewhere in the 18th century, I've read, there was a criminal conspiracy by that name. It spanned continents, existed in major cities dotted around the globe, at a time when modern empire was in its infancy. You could find them in Spain, in France, in Britain, China, Japan, the Americas, Iran, and elsewhere besides. Purportedly, this conspiracy linked the various trading, communication, piratical, and military vessels of the greatest global powers, and in each of these countries, specifically in the cities of the most significant trade routes, the conspiracy yielded a representative. One of the 8 hands. 8 cities for 8 hands. But are these 8 hands our 8 hands? They spread wealth, they spread secrets, they hoarded wealth, they hoarded secrets, they punished their enemies, they monopolized, they ensured that no single power grew truly dominant. Of course, this plan of theirs was nixed by the British Empire late 19th century, and that's when this criminal 8 hands seems to cease to exist. And they believed that the best means of ensuring that no power would remain hoarded in one place was spreading it among 8. So are they the same as our 8 hands? It is difficult to say, because while it would tie everything in a beautiful bow to say that they are, I have heard from the eldest among the 8 hands, some of the eldest, they full-throatedly declare that this is not their origin. Rather, their family head was a man in Australia, specifically among the indigenous peoples there. And Australia wasn't a major player on the geopolitical stage, at least until the 20th century. What I've heard from an Ocho named Elvis, who himself is Australian, is that the family has become so tangled in its own web that it doesn't actually know the truth. That it has as many stories as it has strands. And honestly, I don't think most 8 hands care all that much about their damned origins, but that doesn't mean they can't tell tales. They will weave anything. They'll weave a lie, they will weave the truth. They will weave the best possible stories. And with that, Elvis tells me about this indigenous Australian, this Aboriginal man, who fell afoul of some British invaders in the 19th century and found himself hunted. Because, you see, the British, when they were arriving in Australia en masse, what they had become used to was fear and awe. Their ships would appear on the horizon, and peoples in South America, in Africa, they'd spoken to Spanish, they'd spoken to Portuguese, to French, and of course within themselves, they were very much familiar with the idea that they were seen as foreign invaders and they were to be feared. They arrived in Australia, no such reaction. And this was not what this particular British sailor sought. So when he came ashore, he decided he would give these native peoples something to fear, and he started hunting them. And this one Aboriginal man, he fled into the bush, and he was still pursued, and he fell down a steep and jagged shaft into the earth, where his pursuer gave up on the hunt. Of course, our man, he survived the fall. He found himself entangled in deep, thick webs. And he begged, he pleaded, of course, to nature, to the sky, to the earth, to the spiders, to release him, so that he might reap great vengeance upon the man who put him here. Now, this isn't the same story as you've heard for many of the other primal. In fact, the 8 hands quite pointedly say, no, that story about the injured woman and the landlord and all that, that's nothing to do with us. That's what they say. Rather, they say that this man, he tried to make his deal and he heard nothing. He heard nothing. There was no deal offered in return. He was there, broken legs, a gash down his side, forced to consume, simply to survive, every bug caught in this web. And when the bugs were gone, he started consuming the web as well. But still, his legs hadn't healed. He couldn't climb back up this pit. And when it was time for Mummy Spider to come back and find that not only had her feast been devoured by this injured human, but also her home, well, she bit him somewhere close to 12 times with that venomous bite, and crawled her way into the open wound in his side that was now festering, now controlling him. She enabled him to climb out of the pit, not feeling any of the pain that was previously afflicting him. And wouldn't you know it, the man who put him down there, that British invader, was found hanged by the neck, dead, on a rope of silk. It all sounds very Batman-ish, doesn't it? The idea of falling down a well and facing your fears, that kind of thing. That's what I told Elvis. He laughed at me and said, all stories start somewhere, mate. Well, I don't know that Bob Kane and Bill Finger heard about what happened to Sunday. That's the name that the Aboriginal gentleman ended up with. It wasn't his original name, because he wasn't suddenly released or discovered. He didn't suddenly become a superhero. He was a figure of great fear and myth in Australia for quite some time. Very sweet story, I'm sure you'll agree. Now, the Eight Hands today aren't assassins. They don't go around reaping vengeance, and therefore they're not treading on the toes of shades or furies. They're not trying to balance any books. They prize the web. You see, the web is everything to them, and I don't mean the internet. I mean the web of secrets, of information, of lies, and of truths. They want to know how everyone is connected, and how people have become disconnected, and where strength can be found by reattaching people, sometimes bringing about convergences of individuals that wouldn't ordinarily cross, because the Eight Hands know that when their paths do cross, great things will happen. Now, they want to follow the web all the way into torments and temptations. They want to understand damnations, and they want to understand shattered spaces. They want to understand it all. And this puts them firmly in the camp of archivists, of ascetics, of Nephilim, of our accursed families who very much prize that art of secrecy and hoarding secrets. They know the fears of their targets, and they're very good at prying secrets from them. Because after all, who isn't afraid of a spider crawling inside them? Now, the Eight Hands may well be that cartel from long ago, because now they are most certainly a criminal enterprise. More so than they are a family in a strict sense. More familiar, I guess, having spoken about the Faceless recently, they are closer to them in structure. They are an organisation that spans the world, and depending on who you ask, their centre is in Brazil or Australia. I know they're hardly in the same region, but that's just how they like it. They want everyone else's secrets. They don't want to give up their own. That's how spiders are. Spiders want you caught in their web, but spiders are very good at extracting themselves from others. They want the goods on everyone, and to only dole out what they feel is useful to them to do so. As far as primal conflicts go, the Eight Hands are aloof, or actually I would say more accurately they are beneath the jockeying for position that afflicts so many of the shapeshifters. You see, they don't care all that much about who secures the mantle of eldest and wisest. They've seen the raptors go at it with the Sphinx. They've seen the raptors go at it with the lichens. They've seen the raptors now go at it with the hides. And the Eight Hands are quite happy to stand back and say, not my problem. Because it isn't their problem. They don't care about that kind of power. They know where power truly resides, and it's in what you know and who you can puppet, who you can control. And they know that the web allows them to do all of this. They're not interested in sharing what's truly valuable, and at the same time, they're not really that interested in sharing what other primal consider important. Their territories are distinct. They lurk underground in places that most other primal don't dare to enter. They deal with creatures and families that many other primal wouldn't even consider. They are, in a sense, outsiders to the primal, but that is again how they want to be perceived. Why should they care about everything that other primal are concerned about? Until you can make a web as beautiful as theirs, you're, in the end, just a juicy fly waiting to get caught in the web of the 8 hands.